Title: Shadows of Redemption. Chapter 1. A Marriage Unraveled. The first few years of Amanda and Tom's marriage were marked by a deep, undeniable connection. They had met in their mid-20s, a time when both were full of youthful ambition and a zest for life. Amanda was a spirited, compassionate woman with a sharp wit and a contagious laugh that could light up any room. Tom, on the other hand, was a bit more reserved, but his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty drew Amanda in from the moment they met. They were an unlikely pair in some ways, Amanda's vivacity balanced by Tom's calm demeanor, but together they created a partnership that seemed invincible. Their early years together were filled with adventure. They traveled extensively, exploring new places and cultures, creating memories that would later become the stories they told at family gatherings. Amanda's spontaneity often led them on unplanned detours, like the time they ended up in a tiny village in the Italian countryside after missing their train in Florence. Tom, who thrived on structure, learned to embrace these surprises, seeing them as part of the joy that Amanda brought into his life. They supported each other's dreams, too. Amanda had always wanted to open her own bakery, a small place where she could share her love of baking with the world. Tom encouraged her, even when it meant tightening their budget and sacrificing luxuries so they could save enough money to make her dream a reality. When Amanda finally opened her bakery, Tom was her biggest cheerleader, spending his weekends helping her decorate and set up, despite having little interest in the details of pastries and cakes. Tom, a software engineer, had his own aspirations, to climb the ranks in his company and eventually lead his own team. Amanda supported him wholeheartedly, even when his long hours at the office sometimes left her feeling lonely. They made it work, though, finding ways to reconnect over late-night dinners or weekend getaways. Their love was the kind that others envied, a bond so strong that it seemed unbreakable. But life, as it often does, slowly began to test the foundation they had built. As the years passed, the demands of their respective careers grew, and the pressures of daily life began to chip away at the joy that had once defined their relationship. The bakery, while successful, required Amanda's constant attention. She often woke up before dawn to prepare for the day, and by the time she closed up shop, she was too exhausted to do much more than collapse into bed. Tom's career had also taken off, and with it came more responsibilities, more late nights, and more stress. The intimacy they once shared, those long conversations about their dreams, their spontaneous adventures, became less frequent. They stopped going on their weekend trips, and their evenings together became quiet, punctuated by the hum of the television rather than the laughter that once filled their home. The closeness they had taken for granted began to erode, replaced by a growing distance that neither wanted to acknowledge. Communication, the cornerstone of their relationship, started to falter. They began to argue more often, sometimes about trivial things like who forgot to pick up the dry cleaning or whose turn it was to take out the trash. But underlying these petty squabbles were deeper issues, unspoken resentments and unmet needs. Tom sometimes felt that Amanda's bakery had become more important to her than their marriage, while Amanda silently resented the long hours Tom spent at work, feeling increasingly isolated and lonely. They both recognized that something was wrong, but neither knew how to fix it. They were too caught up in their own frustrations and disappointments to reach out to the other. The love was still there, but it was buried under layers of stress, exhaustion, and unspoken hurt. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. Amanda had been feeling unwell for months, an unsettling mix of fatigue, persistent headaches, and a general sense of malaise that she couldn't quite shake. At first, she brushed it off as stress from managing the bakery, dismissing the symptoms as nothing more than the byproduct of overwork and lack of sleep. Tom noticed the changes in her, but whenever he asked, Amanda assured him it was nothing, just the usual wear and tear of running a business. But as the days turned into weeks, Amanda's condition worsened. The fatigue became overwhelming, her headaches more frequent and intense. She found herself struggling to get through the day, her energy drained before the sun had fully risen. She began to lose weight, her once vibrant face growing pale and gaunt. Still, She pushed through, determined not to let her health interfere with the bakery she had worked so hard to build. Tom, preoccupied with his own work pressures, didn't press the issue further. He was concerned, of course, but he trusted Amanda to take care of herself. After all, she had always been the strong one, the one who seemed to handle whatever life threw at her with grace and resilience. But everything came to a head one evening, just as the last rays of sunlight were fading from the sky. Amanda was at home, preparing dinner while Tom worked late at the office, when she suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of dizziness. The room spun around her, and she grasped the edge of the counter for support. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her vision blurred. She tried to call out for help, but the words caught in her throat. Before she could comprehend what was happening, her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor. Tom came home later that evening to find the house in darkness, an eerie silence hanging in the air. Panic gripped him as he called out for Amanda, but there was no response. He rushed through the house, his heart racing, until he found her lying on the kitchen floor, unconscious. The sight of her, so fragile and unresponsive, filled him with a terror he had never known. In that moment, all the petty arguments and unspoken resentments vanished, replaced by a single, overwhelming fear, the possibility of losing her. Tom scooped Amanda into his arms and rushed her to the hospital, his mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. How had things gotten so bad? Why hadn't he pushed harder when he saw her struggling? The guilt weighed heavily on him as he sped through the streets, desperate to get her the help she needed. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly to stabilize Amanda. Tom stood by, helpless, as they ran a battery of tests, their expressions grave and focused. Hours passed in a blur of anxiety and exhaustion until finally a doctor approached him with the diagnosis. "Amanda has a severe autoimmune disease," the doctor explained, his voice calm but serious. "Her body's immune system is attacking its own tissues, which is why she's been so unwell. We're going to need to start her on treatment right away, but it's going to be a long and difficult road." Tom felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. The doctor's words seemed distant, almost unreal. Amanda was the strongest person he knew. How could this be happening to her? How could the woman who had always been his rock suddenly be so vulnerable, so fragile? The news left Tom reeling. He had always seen Amanda as indomitable, a force of nature who could weather any storm. But now, as he sat by her hospital bed watching her sleep, hooked up to monitors and IVs, he realized just how fragile life could be. The woman he had loved and relied on for 15 years was facing a battle for her life, and there was nothing he could do to protect her. In the weeks that followed, Amanda's condition required intensive treatment. The once energetic woman who had been the heart and soul of their home was now bedridden, her body weak and ravaged by the disease. Tom visited her every day, bringing her flowers, books, and anything he thought might lift her spirits. But each visit left him feeling more helpless and frustrated. The strong, vibrant Amanda he knew was slipping away, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The stress began to eat away at Tom, compounding the guilt and fear that already consumed him. He tried to be strong for Amanda, putting on a brave face when he was with her, but inside, he was unraveling. The weight of the situation was too much to bear, and he had no outlet for the overwhelming emotions he was experiencing. At night, after leaving the hospital, Tom found himself wandering the streets aimlessly, lost in his thoughts. He couldn't go home. Home felt empty without Amanda, a constant reminder of the life they had once shared and the uncertain future that now loomed before them. He didn't want to talk to friends or family about what he was going through, didn't want to burden them with his fears and doubts. So he sought solace in the only place that seemed to offer a temporary reprieve from his pain, a small bar near the hospital. The bar was unremarkable, a dimly lit place with worn wooden stools and a long, polished counter. Tom had passed by it countless times on his way to and from the hospital, but he had never noticed it before. Now it became his refuge, a place where he could escape the crushing reality of his life for a few hours each night. It started with a single drink, a way to take the edge off the anxiety that gnawed at him constantly. But one drink turned into 2, then 3, and before long, Tom found himself returning to the bar every night, seeking the numbness that alcohol provided. The soft murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the low hum of music in the background offered a stark contrast to the sterile, oppressive atmosphere of the hospital. Here, he could lose himself, if only for a little while, in the anonymity of the place. But as Tom sought refuge, Chapter 2, A Chance Encounter. Tom stumbled into the bar, his steps heavy and unsteady, his mind clouded by a fog of alcohol and despair. The small, dimly lit establishment offered a temporary escape from the relentless reality that had become his life. The bar's interior was cozy, with dark wood paneling, aged leather stools, and a low ceiling that gave it a comforting, if slightly oppressive, feel. The muted golden glow of the overhead lights and the soft strains of jazz drifting from the speakers created an ambiance that was both soothing and melancholic. He took a seat on a stool near the end of the bar, far from the few other patrons scattered around. He signaled to the bartender who, without a word, poured him a whiskey, a generous measure that Tom accepted with a grateful nod. The familiar burn of the alcohol as it slid down his throat offered a fleeting reprieve from the turmoil inside him. He took a long sip, savoring the warmth it provided, though it did little to numb the ache in his chest. Tom's gaze wandered around the bar, taking in the scene before him with a detached sense of observation. It was a place where people came to escape, to drown their sorrows, or simply to unwind. In one corner, a group of friends were engaged in animated conversation, their laughter rising above the low murmur of the bar. In another, a solitary man sat hunched over a newspaper, lost in the headlines. It was then that Tom noticed her, Mia. She was seated alone at a small table not far from where Tom sat, her posture slumped and her eyes distant. Her presence was understated but striking. She had dark, shoulder-length hair that cascaded in soft waves around her face, accentuating her pale complexion. Her eyes, deep and soulful, were fixed on the glass of wine she held delicately in her hand. There was a profound sadness in her gaze, an emptiness that seemed to echo Tom's own sense of loss. Tom tried to ignore the pull he felt towards her, focusing instead on his drink and the internal battle raging within him. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was drawn to her for a reason. It was as if she, too, was carrying a burden similar to his own. He found himself watching her, captivated by the aura of loneliness that seemed to surround her. After a few minutes of indecision, Tom finished his whiskey and signaled for another. It was then that Mia looked up from her glass, her eyes meeting his for a brief, silent moment. There was an unspoken acknowledgement in that exchange, a recognition of shared sorrow. Tom felt an odd sense of relief at the brief connection, as if she understood the depth of his grief without needing words. Encouraged by the unspoken bond, Tom decided to take a chance. He walked over to Mia's table, his steps slightly unsteady. As he approached, he could see the surprise in her eyes, but she offered him a faint, tentative smile. "Mind if I join you?" Tom asked, his voice rough and hesitant, betraying his nerves. Mia studied him for a moment before nodding. "Please, have a seat." Tom sat down across from her, the small table seeming to shrink the distance between them. He introduced himself, his voice carrying a note of vulnerability he hadn't intended but couldn't suppress. "I'm Tom. I've been coming here a lot lately." Mia's eyes softened as she responded, "I'm Mia. I come here to think. It's nice to meet you, Tom." Their conversation started slowly, with hesitant words and careful questions. They talked about the weather, the bar, and small observations about the people around them. But beneath the surface there was a shared sense of unease, a mutual understanding that something deeper was driving them both to this place. As the evening wore on, their conversation deepened. Tom learned that Mia's husband had been ill, not unlike Amanda's situation, but with a tragic twist. Mia's husband had succumbed to his illness, leaving her alone with her grief. Tom felt a pang of empathy as Mia recounted the whirlwind of emotions she had experienced, from the initial shock of his sudden illness to the crushing weight of his loss. Mia spoke with a quiet sadness, her voice trembling slightly as she recounted the pain of watching someone she loved deteriorate. Tom listened intently, feeling an unexpected kinship with her. He found himself sharing his own story, about Amanda's sudden illness, his fears, and the sense of helplessness that had become his constant companion. They discovered that their experiences, though different in detail, were united by a common thread of sorrow and fear. The conversations flowed more easily now, their words weaving a tapestry of shared grief and understanding. The bar around them seemed to fade into the background as they lost themselves in the exchange. Each story, each confession, built a bridge between them that felt both fragile and profound. Hours passed, and Tom was surprised when he glanced at his watch to find it was well past midnight. The bar was quieter now, the other patrons having drifted away. Mia seemed reluctant to end the evening, and Tom felt the same. There was something comforting about her presence, a reprieve from the loneliness that had become his constant companion. Before they parted, Tom and Mia exchanged phone numbers. They promised to check in on each other, their agreement marking the beginning of a tentative friendship. Tom felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks, buoyed by the connection he had made with Mia. It was a fragile hope, but it was something. In the days that followed, Tom found himself looking forward to his conversations with Mia. They texted frequently, sharing updates about their days and offering words of comfort and encouragement. Their growing friendship became a lifeline for both of them, a source of solace in the midst of their respective battles. What had begun as a chance encounter in a bar born of shared pain soon evolved into something more profound. Tom found himself drawn to Mia, not just because of their common experiences, but because she reminded him of a side of himself he had nearly forgotten, a part of him that was open, vulnerable, and willing to connect deeply with another person. For Mia, Tom's presence offered a reprieve from the crushing loneliness that had enveloped her since her husband's death. Their bond deepened with each passing day, their conversations growing more intimate and revealing. They began to confide in each other about their fears, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. The bar, once a place of solitary escape for Tom, had become a space where they could both find a sense of connection and understanding. But as their relationship deepened, the lines between friendship and something more began to blur. The comfort they found in each other's presence created a vulnerability that neither had anticipated. And as they navigated the complexities of their emotions, they each grappled with the evolving nature of their connection, unsure of where it would lead them. Chapter 3. Crossing a Line. As Amanda's condition began to show signs of improvement, the burden on Tom's shoulders seemed to grow heavier. The initial relief he felt upon seeing Amanda recover from her severe illness was now overshadowed by a gnawing sense of guilt. It wasn't just the weight of Amanda's sickness that had been difficult to bear. It was the internal conflict he faced every day, torn between his dedication to his wife and the growing attachment he had formed with Mia. Tom had made a concerted effort to distance himself from Mia, focusing all his energy on Amanda's recovery and their life together. He spent every available moment by Amanda's side, attending her physical therapy sessions, helping with her medication, and making sure their home was as comfortable and supportive as possible. He was determined to make amends for the time lost and to show Amanda how much he cherished her. Despite his best efforts, the emotional strain proved too much. The nights were particularly hard. The quiet of their home, once a refuge, now felt stifling and filled with unspoken anxieties. Tom's internal chaos drove him back to the bar, the place where he had first met Mia, a sanctuary of sorts that offered a brief escape from his reality. One evening, after a particularly trying day at the hospital, Tom found himself walking through the bar's doors with a familiar sense of dread and longing. The dimly lit interior, the gentle hum of conversation, and the clinking of glasses seemed to offer solace in a world that felt increasingly out of control. Tom scanned the room and, to his relief, saw Mia seated at their usual spot. Mia looked up as he approached, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and something more profound. She was still grappling with her own grief and the void left by her husband's death. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her makeup was minimal, her natural beauty enhanced by the sadness that lingered in her eyes. Tom could see the strain etched into her face, a mirror of his own turmoil. They exchanged brief, weary smiles, and Tom took a seat across from her. The familiar ritual of ordering drinks and engaging in small talk began, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. Tom could feel it as clearly as if it were a physical presence, a silent acknowledgement of the shared pain that had drawn them together. Their conversation started with mundane observations, comments about the weather, updates on Amanda's progress, and small talk about the bar's ambiance. But as the evening progressed, the conversation took a darker turn. Mia confessed her overwhelming sense of loss. Her voice trembled as she spoke about her husband, the life they had built together, and the chasm his absence had created. She felt adrift, unable to find a way forward in a world that now seemed empty and unrecognizable. Tom listened intently, feeling a pang of sympathy that quickly evolved into a deep resonance with her words. He was haunted by his own fears and guilt, the fear of losing Amanda, the guilt of his betrayal, and the anxiety about the future. As Mia spoke, Tom felt a profound connection to her suffering. He found himself admitting to Mia how scared he was, how the weight of his actions and the uncertainty of his future were pressing down on him with relentless intensity. The emotional vulnerability between them was palpable. Each shared word seemed to strip away the protective layers they had built around themselves. They were no longer just two people meeting in a bar. They were two souls laid bare, sharing their deepest fears and regrets. The conversation eventually faltered, the space between them charged with an intensity that neither could ignore. Mia looked at Tom with a blend of sadness and yearning, her eyes searching his face for a sign of understanding. Tom's gaze fell to her lips, and he felt a magnetic pull that he could not deny. Mia was the first to move. She leaned in slowly, her breath warm against Tom's face. Her lips brushed against his in a tentative, questioning kiss. The contact was gentle, a soft exploration that seemed to linger in the charged silence between them. Tom hesitated for a fraction of a second, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. He was acutely aware of Amanda's presence in his life, the vows he had taken, and the hurt he was about to inflict. But the weight of his guilt, his loneliness, and the overwhelming need for solace eclipsed his better judgment. The kiss deepened as Mia's lips pressed more firmly against his. The world around them seemed to dissolve. The clinking of glasses, the murmurs of other patrons, and the steady beat of the music all faded into the background. In that moment, all of Tom's fears and regrets melted away, replaced by a desperate craving to feel alive and connected. The kiss was passionate, a release of pent-up emotions and frustrations. Tom's hands, previously clenched into fists on his lap, moved to cup Mia's face, pulling her closer. The warmth of her body, the softness of her touch, and the raw intensity of their embrace offered a fleeting escape from the pain that had defined his recent months. As their kiss ended, Tom's heart raced with a mix of guilt and exhilaration. He pulled away slowly, his mind reeling from the gravity of what had just transpired. The line they had crossed felt irrevocable, a breach of trust and commitment that he knew could never be undone. Yet, in the aftermath of their encounter, there was an unsettling sense of peace. With Mia, Tom had found a refuge from the relentless turmoil of his life. When he woke up the next morning, the sun's early light cast a stark contrast to the previous night's darkness. The room was still, and Tom lay in the unfamiliar surroundings of Mia's apartment, his mind consumed by a storm of emotions. Guilt and shame were the dominant feelings, but there was also a strange, unsettling calm. Mia had been his sanctuary, a place of temporary respite from his own self-loathing and grief. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him as he dressed and prepared to leave. He knew that he had betrayed Amanda, the woman who had stood by him through every challenge, who was now recovering from a life-threatening illness. The enormity of his betrayal felt suffocating, and the shame of his actions was nearly unbearable. Despite the intense guilt, Tom couldn't bring himself to end things with Mia. Their connection had become too significant, a lifeline in a world that seemed increasingly chaotic and uncertain. As the days went by, Tom struggled to reconcile his actions with his feelings for Amanda. He was trapped between the two worlds, the life he was trying to rebuild with his wife and the solace he had found in Mia. The weight of his actions became a constant presence, an unbearable burden that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. Chapter 4. Suspicion and Discovery. Amanda's return home from the hospital was met with a mixture of relief and trepidation. After months of confinement within the sterile walls of medical institutions, the familiarity of her own space should have been comforting. Yet as she crossed the threshold of her home, she felt a profound sense of disconnection. The walls, the furniture, the very essence of what was once her sanctuary now seemed alien and distant. Physically, she was frail, her once vibrant presence now diminished to a shadow of her former self. The illness had drained her of energy and vitality, leaving her weak and weary. Her body, though recovering, still bore the marks of her battle. Pale skin, thin and fragile, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and emotional strain. Emotionally, the toll was equally severe. The months of uncertainty, the pain and the isolation had left her feeling disoriented, as though she were waking up in a world that had moved on without her. Tom had been there through her illness, and she had leaned on him heavily. She had always trusted him implicitly, and in the early days of her recovery, she had found comfort in his presence. But as the days passed, Amanda began to notice a shift in his demeanor. Tom's smiles, which were once genuine, now seemed forced. His touch, once tender and reassuring, had become hesitant, almost mechanical. There was a palpable distance between them, a coldness that she couldn't ignore. At first, Amanda tried to rationalize Tom's behavior. She attributed his aloofness to the stress and exhaustion of her illness. The long hours at the hospital, the worry and the strain of supporting her through such a difficult time must have taken a toll on him. She tried to be understanding, to offer him space, but the distance continued to grow. Tom's absences became more frequent and more elaborate. He would make excuses about work commitments that required him to stay late, or meetings that he couldn't miss. His need for space was spoken of almost apologetically, yet it became increasingly apparent that his absences were more than just occasional work obligations. Amanda noticed that he would leave for the bar more often, disappearing for hours without a clear explanation. The small details began to accumulate, each one a subtle clue that something was amiss. Amanda noticed a faint but distinct scent on Tom's clothes, one that wasn't hers. It was floral, lingering, and foreign. It was the kind of scent that suggested intimacy, something more personal than a mere accident. There was also the lipstick stain on his collar, a smudge that she couldn't ignore. She had seen that shade before, not in her own collection, but in the colors she had noticed on Mia when Tom had spoken of her in passing. The way Tom avoided her gaze when she asked about his day, the abrupt changes in his behavior, and the small, seemingly insignificant details all contributed to a growing sense of unease within Amanda. Her intuition, honed by years of knowing Tom, was telling her that something was profoundly wrong. The trust she had always placed in him was being eroded by these mounting suspicions. One evening, as the dim light of the setting sun cast long shadows across the room, Amanda found herself alone in the house while Tom took a shower. The quiet was heavy with her thoughts, the silence amplifying her growing anxiety. As she sat in their bedroom, her gaze fell upon Tom's phone, left carelessly on the nightstand. The device was a tangible link to the world Tom had been withdrawing into. Amanda's heart raced as she reached for the phone, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She knew that what she was about to do was a violation of their trust, but the need to know, to understand the source of her discomfort, overwhelmed her. With a shaky breath, she unlocked the phone. Tom's passcode was something she had learned long ago, a routine detail she had once thought nothing of. The screen lit up with a series of messages, each one a digital echo of Tom's recent activities. Amanda's eyes were drawn immediately to the text messages, and as she began to scroll, her pulse quickened. The early exchanges appeared innocuous, brief check-ins, friendly inquiries, and polite conversation. But as she scrolled further, the tone shifted. The messages became more personal, the language more intimate. Mia's name appeared frequently, her texts filled with affectionate terms and emoticons that spoke of a closeness far beyond mere friendship. The conversations were not just friendly banter, but included late-night exchanges and plans to meet. There were promises to see each other soon, words of comfort, and expressions of longing that left no room for doubt. Amanda's heart sank as the realization hit her with brutal clarity. The betrayal was laid bare before her in the stark glow of the phone's screen. The messages, once a source of comfort for Tom, were now a dagger in Amanda's heart. The rage and sadness that surged through her were almost overwhelming, threatening to consume her entirely. The depth of Tom's betrayal was now undeniable, and the pain of his infidelity was a cold, sharp ache that settled deep within her. For a moment, Amanda was paralyzed. The world around her seemed to spin, the room closing in as her mind struggled to process the enormity of what she had discovered. How could Tom do this to her? After everything they had been through, the shared struggles, the promises made, how could he betray her trust so completely? Her initial impulse was to confront Tom immediately, to scream and cry and demand answers. The thought of him walking in, seeing her with his phone, was almost unbearable. But a cold, calculating part of her mind began to take over. The raw, emotional reaction was still there, but now it was tempered by a steely resolve. Amanda needed to understand the full extent of the betrayal before she made any decisions. She needed to confront Tom with the evidence, to have him face the truth of his actions. As the sound of the shower ceased and the bathroom door creaked open, Amanda quickly returned the phone to its place on the nightstand. She composed herself, taking deep breaths to steady her trembling hands and calm the whirlwind of emotions raging inside her. The next steps would require clarity and purpose. She needed to be prepared to confront the man she had loved and trusted, the man who had shattered their world with his deceit. The echoes of Tom's footsteps approached the bedroom, and Amanda braced herself for the confrontation that was to come. She knew that the road ahead would be fraught with pain and difficult decisions, but the clarity she had gained from the phone's revelations had solidified her resolve. The truth was out, and now it was time to face it head-on. Chapter 5. A Plan for Revenge. In the days following the excruciating discovery of Tom's betrayal, Amanda underwent a profound transformation. The initial shock and raw pain had settled into a steely resolve. She had always been a loving and devoted wife, but now she moved through her days with a cold precision that was unsettling to those around her. Her demeanor became noticeably distant, her interactions with Tom marked by a restrained formality that contrasted starkly with their previous closeness. Tom, for his part, sensed the change immediately. He noticed how Amanda's eyes, once warm and affectionate, had turned into a sharp, scrutinizing gaze. The warmth of her smile had vanished, replaced by a guarded, polite expression. Tom tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, to act as though everything was fine between them. He made small talk, attempted to engage in their old routines, and even planned outings to reconnect. But no matter how hard he tried, the tension between them was palpable. Amanda's demeanor was a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened up between them. Amanda, now fully aware of Tom's betrayal and the extent of his infidelity, was determined not to be a passive victim in this narrative. 15 years of shared life, trust, and love had been shattered, and she wasn't about to let Tom walk away without facing the consequences of his actions. Her pain, though deep and consuming, had been channeled into a calculated plan for revenge, a way to make Tom understand the profound hurt he had caused her. The foundation of Amanda's plan was rooted in gathering information and gaining control over the situation. She adopted the role of the unsuspecting wife, feigning ignorance about the affair while meticulously observing Tom's every move. Her interactions with him were carefully measured. Each word and gesture weighed against her internal resolve. She was vigilant, watching for signs of his continuing deceit, or any attempts to reconcile that might provide additional leverage. Knowing that Mia was a key element of Tom's betrayal, Amanda decided to confront the situation head-on. She began frequenting the bar where Tom and Mia had first met, a place that now held a darker significance in her mind. The bar, with its dim lighting and muted conversations, was both a reminder of her husband's infidelity and a strategic location for her plans. One evening, Amanda walked into the bar with an air of casual confidence. She wore a simple, understated outfit, jeans and a blouse that made her blend into the crowd, but her demeanor was purposeful. She approached the bar, ordered a drink, and took a seat at a spot that allowed her a clear view of the entrance and the patrons. Mia was there, as Amanda had anticipated. She sat alone at a corner table, nursing a glass of wine, her posture a little slumped, indicative of the lingering grief and fatigue that Amanda had seen before. Amanda took a deep breath and approached Mia, her steps measured and deliberate. "Hi, mind if I join you?" Amanda's voice was warm and friendly, with just a hint of vulnerability. She made sure her approach was disarming, presenting herself as an ordinary bargoer looking for company. Mia looked up, her eyes momentarily widening in surprise before softening into a welcoming smile. "Sure, please do. I could use some company." Amanda introduced herself as Claire, a name she had chosen to maintain anonymity. The two women quickly fell into conversation. Amanda was careful to listen more than she spoke, allowing Mia to share her story. She learned about Mia's recent widowhood, the profound sense of loss she felt, and her struggle to find a new purpose in life. Amanda's heart ached for Mia, but she kept her emotions in check, focusing instead on gathering information and observing Mia's responses. Mia spoke freely about her feelings for Tom, revealing how he had become a source of comfort during her difficult time. Her words were filled with a mix of admiration and longing, and Amanda had to suppress her anger as Mia described the moments they had shared. The conversations were tinged with a sense of sadness and confusion, reflecting Mia's internal conflict as she navigated her feelings amidst her grief. Amanda maintained a facade of sympathetic understanding, nodding along and offering empathetic responses. She subtly steered the conversation to topics related to Tom, gauging Mia's reactions and collecting details that would later fit into her broader plan for revenge. Each revelation from Mia was a piece of the puzzle that Amanda was assembling, a way to make sense of the betrayal and to leverage it in her scheme. As weeks passed, Amanda's visits to the bar became more frequent. She developed a routine of appearing there at least once or twice a week, each time under the guise of casual conversation and newfound friendship. Her interactions with Mia were carefully orchestrated, designed to maintain the illusion of genuine interest while keeping her own emotions tightly controlled. Amanda's growing connection with Mia served multiple purposes. It allowed her to gather intimate details about Tom's interactions and sentiments, which she could use to confront him with irrefutable evidence of his infidelity. More importantly, it placed her in a position to execute her plan for revenge with precision. The friendship she cultivated with Mia was a means to an end, a way to ensure that Tom's betrayal was exposed in the most impactful manner possible. By maintaining a friendly, supportive front, while secretly harboring her desire for retribution, Amanda was able to navigate the complexities of her situation with a calculated calm. Her plan was not just about emotional payback. It was about reclaiming her sense of control and dignity. She wanted Tom to fully grasp the depth of his wrongdoing and to feel the repercussions of his actions in a way that mirrored the pain he had inflicted upon her. Amanda's plan for revenge was taking shape, and as she continued her interactions with Mia, she remained focused on the ultimate goal, making Tom confront the full extent of his betrayal and the emotional wreckage it had left behind. Chapter 6. Confrontation and Forgiveness. The day of reckoning was meticulously planned. Amanda had orchestrated a meeting between Tom, Mia, and herself at the bar where Tom and Mia's affair had taken shape. The bar, once a sanctuary for Tom in his moments of despair, was now the stage for Amanda's dramatic confrontation. Neither Tom nor Mia was aware of the full extent of what Amanda had planned, but she had ensured they would both be present at the appointed time. As the clock struck the hour of the meeting, Tom arrived at the bar first. The usual ambiance of low lighting and gentle hum of conversations was palpable, but Tom's focus was solely on Mia. His face lit up with a genuine smile as he spotted her across the room. He moved towards her with a sense of eager anticipation, his mind buzzing with thoughts of their time together. But as he drew closer, his smile faltered, and his expression twisted into one of shock and horror when he saw Amanda walking in behind Mia. Mia, sitting with her back to the entrance, looked up and saw Amanda's face. Her initial confusion quickly morphed into terror as she realized who Amanda was and what this confrontation meant. The atmosphere in the bar shifted dramatically, the casual chatter falling away as the three of them became the focal point of the scene. Amanda's entrance was marked by a purposeful stride, her demeanor calm yet brimming with an underlying intensity that made the tension almost tangible. Amanda approached Tom and Mia with a deliberate, measured pace. Her face was a mask of composure, a carefully crafted expression that concealed the tumultuous emotions raging inside her. She looked at Tom first, her eyes cold and unyielding, then shifted her gaze to Mia and finally back to Tom. The weight of her stare was like a physical force, making the space between them seem charged with unspoken accusations. "So, this is the woman you've been spending all your time with," Amanda said, her voice cold and steady. Her tone carried the weight of betrayal, each word cutting through the air with precision. "This is the woman you chose over me." Tom's face went pale, his initial shock giving way to a flood of panic. He stammered, struggling to find words to explain the inexplicable, but Amanda cut him off with a wave of her hand, her patience exhausted. "Save it, Tom. I've seen the messages. I know everything." Mia, her face now ashen with guilt and shame, opened her mouth to speak. "Amanda, she began, but Amanda silenced her with a cutting glare. The intensity of Amanda's look was enough to make Mia's voice falter, her words dying in her throat. "This isn't about you, Mia," Amanda said firmly, her gaze shifting back to Tom. "This is between Tom and me." The tension between Amanda and Tom was palpable, a nearly physical presence in the dimly lit bar. Amanda's eyes blazed with a mix of anger and hurt, her feelings laid bare in the confrontation. "How could you do this to me, Tom?" she demanded, her voice trembling with emotion. "After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you." Tom, caught off guard by Amanda's ferocity, was rendered speechless. He had never seen her like this, so raw, so full of anguish and rage. His attempts to apologize came out as jumbled, desperate pleas. "I'm so sorry, Amanda," he said, his voice cracking. "I've been lost and confused. I never meant to hurt you." Amanda's heart was breaking as she faced Tom, the love she had once felt for him now tangled with the pain of his betrayal. "I loved you, Tom," she said, her voice breaking as she struggled to hold back tears. "I gave you everything, and you threw it all away for what? A fling? A moment of weakness?" The gravity of Amanda's words hit Tom like a physical blow. Overwhelmed with remorse, he fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Amanda," he sobbed, his voice muffled by his own despair. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right." For a long, agonizing moment, Amanda stood there, her gaze fixed on Tom. The conflict within her was palpable, a battle between her deep-seated love for Tom and her need to assert her own dignity. The silence was thick with emotion, the air heavy with the weight of unspoken feelings. Finally, Amanda made her decision, her voice softening but still resolute. "I forgive you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words were both a balm and a burden, a testament to her strength and her willingness to move forward. Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? I forgive you," Amanda repeated, her voice stronger now. "But things will never be the same between us. You broke my trust, Tom, and it will take a long time to rebuild it. But I'm willing to try, if you are." Tom's face was a mixture of relief and shame, his heart filled with a complex blend of emotions. He nodded fervently, his voice earnest. "I'll do anything, Amanda, I swear." Turning her attention to Mia, who was still standing there, paralyzed with fear, Amanda's expression hardened. "As for you, Mia," she said with a steely edge, "I suggest you find another bar to frequent." Mia, tears streaming down her face, nodded mutely. She was overwhelmed by guilt and the weight of Amanda's words, and she muttered a heartfelt apology before quickly leaving the bar. Her exit was a silent acknowledgement of the pain she had caused and the part she had played in this painful drama. With Mia gone, Amanda and Tom were left alone in the bar, their shared space now filled with a fragile silence. The confrontation had been intense, and while Amanda's forgiveness was a step towards healing, the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges. Amanda's decision to forgive Tom was a powerful one, but the journey of rebuilding their trust and their relationship was just beginning. The pain of the betrayal would linger, but Amanda's choice to move forward with forgiveness opened a new chapter in their lives, one that would require time, patience, and a renewed commitment to each other. Chapter 7. The Road to Redemption. The aftermath of the confrontation was marked by a profound and palpable tension. Tom's return to the house was accompanied by an atmosphere thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The walls of their home, once a sanctuary of shared memories, now seemed to echo with the weight of their strained relationship. Tom's attempts to resume a sense of normalcy were met with Amanda's cautious distance. The air between them was heavy with the remnants of their recent confrontation. Every interaction felt strained, laden with the weight of Tom's betrayal and Amanda's deep hurt. They moved through their days in a sort of fragile routine, each moment fraught with the potential for misstep. Despite Tom's earnest attempts to bridge the gap between them, the scar left by the affair was deep and visible. It was clear that healing would be neither quick nor easy. Determined to rebuild their fractured marriage, Amanda and Tom agreed to seek professional help. They found a marriage counselor who specialized in working with couples dealing with infidelity. The decision to pursue counseling was a significant one, symbolizing their commitment to work through their issues. Their first session was an emotional upheaval, a space where raw feelings were laid bare and where they confronted the painful truths of their relationship. In therapy, Amanda and Tom were encouraged to express their feelings openly. Amanda's anger and hurt were palpable, her emotions spilling out with an intensity that reflected the depth of her betrayal. She spoke of the anguish of feeling unloved and unimportant, of the disbelief that Tom could have chosen someone else over her. Her pain was a constant undercurrent in their sessions, a reminder of the betrayal she was working to overcome. Tom, on the other hand, was overwhelmed by guilt. He grappled with the shame of his actions and the responsibility for the hurt he had caused Amanda. His remorse was sincere, and he struggled to articulate the depth of his regret and his desire to make amends. The sessions were emotionally exhausting for both of them, a process of peeling back layers of hurt and confusion to get to the heart of their issues. Gradually, through the guidance of their counselor, Amanda and Tom began to understand each other's perspectives more clearly. The therapy sessions offered them tools to communicate more effectively and to address the underlying issues that had contributed to the affair. They practiced active listening, made efforts to validate each other's feelings, and worked on rebuilding their trust. The journey was arduous, marked by setbacks and breakthroughs, but it was a crucial step in their path to reconciliation. Tom was acutely aware that words alone could not repair the damage. He understood that he needed to demonstrate his commitment to Amanda through his actions. One of the first steps he took was to stop drinking entirely. He recognized that his visits to the bar had played a significant role in the unraveling of their marriage. By eliminating this escape, he hoped to prove that he was ready to face his issues head-on and prioritize his relationship with Amanda. Tom also made a concerted effort to spend more quality time with Amanda. He planned activities they could enjoy together, from simple walks in the park to cooking dinners at home. He wanted to rebuild the connection they had lost, to re-establish the intimacy and companionship that had been eroded. His actions were thoughtful and intentional, aimed at showing Amanda that he was dedicated to mending their relationship. Moreover, Tom made a point of expressing his love and appreciation for Amanda more frequently. He left her notes of encouragement, prepared her favorite meals, and made sure to be present and attentive. He understood that rebuilding trust was a gradual process and that his daily actions needed to reflect his genuine commitment to their marriage. Amanda, for her part, faced the challenging task of letting go of her anger. Holding on to resentment would only further poison their relationship, and she knew that if they were to have any chance of rebuilding what they had lost, she needed to find a way to move past her hurt. This was no easy feat. Her emotions were still raw, and the betrayal felt fresh. In therapy, Amanda worked on identifying and processing her anger in constructive ways. She learned techniques for managing her emotions, such as journaling and mindfulness, which helped her to address her feelings without allowing them to dominate her interactions with Tom. Slowly, she began to see Tom not just as the man who had betrayed her, but as someone who was making a sincere effort to right his wrongs. The process of forgiveness was gradual and complex. Amanda allowed herself to acknowledge her pain without letting it control her responses. As time went on, she found it easier to appreciate Tom's efforts and recognize the steps he was taking to earn back her trust. She began to see glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with, the person who was now working tirelessly to repair the damage he had done. Their road to redemption was marked by incremental progress. Each day they took small steps towards healing, building a new foundation for their relationship. The path was fraught with challenges, but Amanda and Tom were committed to facing them together. The journey required patience, understanding, and a willingness to confront their own vulnerabilities. Ultimately, the road to redemption was not about erasing the past, but about creating a new future. Amanda and Tom's willingness to confront their issues head-on, to seek help and work through their problems, was a testament to their dedication to each other. The process was ongoing, and the healing was far from complete, but they were determined to move forward together, striving to rebuild their trust and restore their relationship. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. The months that followed the tumultuous period of reckoning were a time of profound transformation for Amanda and Tom. The process of rebuilding their relationship was neither swift nor effortless, but it was marked by an enduring commitment to rediscover the love that had initially brought them together. Each day became a testament to their resilience and their shared determination to heal. As time passed, Amanda and Tom worked diligently to restore their connection. The initial, painful memories of the affair began to fade into the background as they focused on strengthening their bond. They committed themselves to learning and growing together, embracing a renewed sense of purpose in their relationship. Communication, once a casualty of their struggles, became a cornerstone of their renewed marriage. Amanda and Tom made a conscious effort to be more open and honest with each other. They set aside time each day to discuss their feelings, their concerns, and their dreams. These conversations were no longer marred by secrecy or avoidance. Instead, they were characterized by a genuine desire to understand and support each other. They also worked on rebuilding trust, understanding that it was not a matter of simply forgetting the past, but of proving their commitment through consistent actions. Tom was especially diligent in demonstrating his reliability and sincerity. He followed through on his promises, kept his word, and made every effort to show Amanda that he was fully invested in their future together. Amanda, in turn, embraced the challenge of letting go of lingering resentment. She recognized that holding on to anger would only hinder their progress. She learned to channel her emotions into positive actions, focusing on what they were building rather than what had been lost. Her journey was marked by moments of struggle and vulnerability, but she gradually found peace in the knowledge that they were working towards something meaningful. The affair, though a painful chapter in their story, became a significant turning point for Amanda and Tom. It forced them to confront their issues head-on and to address the underlying problems that had contributed to the breakdown of their relationship. While the affair would always be a part of their narrative, it no longer defined them. Instead, it became a catalyst for change, a moment that pushed them to examine their marriage and to commit to each other more deeply than ever before. Their journey of healing was supported by the tools and insights they gained from therapy. The counseling sessions had equipped them with strategies for managing conflict, expressing their needs, and rebuilding their trust. They used these tools to navigate the challenges that arose, approaching each issue with a renewed sense of partnership and collaboration. As they looked towards the future, Amanda and Tom understood that their marriage was not perfect, nor was it ever meant to be. They acknowledged that every relationship faces obstacles and that perfection is an unrealistic standard. What mattered was their resilience, their ability to adapt and grow together, and their unwavering commitment to each other. Amanda and Tom's marriage emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient than before. They had faced their demons, confronted their deepest fears, and come out on the other side with a renewed commitment to one another. Their relationship was built on a foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect, a foundation that had been tested but had ultimately proven unshakable. In their new beginning, Amanda and Tom embraced the future with a sense of hope and optimism. They knew that life would continue to present challenges, but they were confident in their ability to face them together. Their partnership had been forged in the crucible of adversity, and it was now characterized by a deeper understanding and a stronger connection. As they moved forward, Amanda and Tom focused on the positive aspects of their relationship, celebrating their successes and supporting each other through their struggles. They nurtured their love through shared experiences, continued to communicate openly, and remained committed to growing together as individuals and as a couple. Their journey was a testament to the power of forgiveness and the strength of their bond. Amanda and Tom had navigated the complexities of betrayal and emerged with a deeper appreciation for one another. Their love was no longer just a fleeting emotion, but a steadfast commitment to facing life's challenges together. And so, as they looked towards the horizon of their shared future, Amanda and Tom embraced their renewed relationship with a sense of gratitude and determination. They understood that their journey was ongoing, but they were ready to face whatever came their way, with a renewed sense of purpose, a deepened connection, and an unwavering belief in their love for each other.